How precious it is to be with you again today. How precious it is to actually pause and recognize the one power, the one presence, the one life that is living in, through, and as each and every one of us. How precious it is to lift our voice in song, to be able to see, to hear, to walk. You know, one of the spiritual practices that I enjoy engaging in is the spiritual practice of appreciation, because what I know is what I appreciate appreciates. What I appreciate grows. What I appreciate continues to expand. And I recognize the value in the things that I appreciate. And so I want to start off by simply appreciating you and pausing in this moment to not only be in a moment of gratitude and thanksgiving, but that the nuance for me in appreciate is recognizing the value. And I recognize the value of this spiritual community, of all of its members, of folks who come in every now and then and pop in to be present. Like, I appreciate all of it. And it's interesting because once upon a time, I had this thought and idea and belief that, you know, to be consistent, you get to be at our spiritual community or at church or at some kind of spiritual community each and every Sunday, that you had to show up, that you had to be there. And what I've come to know is that there's nothing special about Sunday mornings, that there's nothing special about Monday mornings or Tuesday mornings or Wednesday mornings or all of that, that it is all part of our eternal living and being. And when we pop in to see one another and to be one another, that is what is special. That it is special to even have that consistency each and every week. I can count upon you. And so that there is value in all of it. And so I just want to say how much I appreciate this spiritual community, and you mean the world to me. And yeah, we've been on this journey this year as I take a look at our global theme for 2021 has been timeless wisdom and evolutionary vision. And for the month of November, it's been breathe in the view. And in that breathing in the view, we've had this opportunity to see our life, or to see our year's journey as getting to the summit, or getting to this place of view. And as you can see by the visual, you know, that we're here at this particular peak, at this particular vista. And we have this opportunity today to talk about celebrating the triumphant journey. Now, I don't know about you, but as I was taking a look at our material to share, since most of our centers are sharing the same material, I was, you know, really reflecting upon this idea of celebrating the triumphant journey. And I asked myself, like, which journey? You know, like, which journey? A journey as a humanity, journey as Centers for Spiritual Living, our individual journeys, the journey of Downey Center for Spiritual Living, having celebrated, you know, 51 years now in existence, and moving forward into the next, you know, 50 years. Celebrating those journeys and celebrating the triumphant journey, we need to be able to see something as triumphant. Our sub-theme this month is also the abundance is real. Let's keep the flow going, where we look at our abundant life, where we look at our abundance and how we continue to be in the flow. So it was quite interesting then to see it from that perspective of celebrating the triumphant journey, because the abundance is real, especially within our community. And, you know, this whole theme about reaching a summit, about breathing in the view, is really something to take a look at, pun intended, with the view. And that is, you know, individually and collectively. You know, individually, what has your vista been? What has been your view? Where are you looking? What are you facing? I'm one who reminds our community that if there's a ship in the ocean and it's headed towards an obstacle that it's going to hit, that ship, you know, in the distance there, that ship doesn't need to do a right about face in order to prevent hitting that obstacle. But it is just a small shift enough to put it on a different trajectory. You know, if it's going to hit something here, there's this small shift that now in the long run of things, it misses. And so it's also the same with our vista, with our view, with what we're looking at and where we're looking from. That with the slightest shift, we can actually begin to augment and see life differently. You know, if my focus is on doom and gloom and blame and shame and anxiety and doubt and fear and depression and anger, if that is my vista, if that is what is before me, if I continue to look at the news and allow it to inform my full life, then that is my view. And so celebrating the triumphant journey is like, what? Now, you know, I get that our news channels are our prayer request. I'm clear about that. And it is the place of where the news is the prayer request. And so if I am observing or taking in prayer request from our current events, from what is happening, from what folks are experiencing, I'm not suggesting that we put our head in a hole and not see it and be like la 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 la. But if we allow it to be what informs us and what guides our living and our breathing, then celebrating a triumphant journey is going to be a little bit difficult. But like that ship that I'm talking about, with the slightest shift in our consciousness and in our awareness, we have this opportunity to now breathe in a different view, to now begin to look at where we've been and where we've come to. And being here at this particular summit, individually and collectively as a community, we have gone from, you know, from people saying, you know, my life sucks, to my life is abundant and it's great and it's wonderful, to everything in between. And wherever it is that you are on that spectrum, I want to share with you that you are doing well. Even if you're on that bottom part of the spectrum where it's not so good. Because let me ask you this, is how were you doing during the last pandemic? Compared to what? Like, what are we comparing to? And if we're here using technology on social media, viewing on YouTube, viewing later on, in essence, we are doing well. If we're still breathing in and out on our own, we are doing well. And celebrating the triumphant journey of where we were and where we currently are on this summit with this particular view, if you're not appreciating the current view that you have on this summit, just a simple shift will give a different perspective and a different view. You see, it's interesting because as Centers for Spiritual Living, we seem to have this lofty idea and vision. Our vista is, that we create a world that works for all. And when we're looking at what's happening in our world today, even just here in the U.S., and we're seeing how gun violence, how poverty, how COVID continues to destroy communities, as we see how addiction and how homelessness continues to ravage through our communities and through the lives of people that we love. It's sometimes difficult to see a different view. It can be challenging to then go, I'm paralyzed right here with this view. Like, I cannot move. I am flabbergasted. I am stuck in beliefs and behaviors. But it is the cycle that I might be in. And if we just breathe. Part of the monthly theme is breathe in the view. If we just pause to breathe and recognizing that we are breathing not because we are willing ourselves to breathe, but that actually there is a power, a presence, a life that is breathing you. And even just that moment of bringing it in, taking a step back to recognize I am breathing, and not because I reminded myself to breathe, because I've been breathing all along, but begin to actually recognize that life is living us, that life is breathing us, that this power and presence is so very close that it is our very life. And just a moment of recognizing the breath and falling into an appreciation of the breath. I am breathing. And just that opportunity to take in that breath, that inhale, that exhale, begins to shift. It begins to make things change. When we're able to move into appreciating each breath, we recognize that we are actually in partnership, in a one, not even in a partnership, but that we are one with life. And sometimes taking it step by step, especially in the face of no agreement, especially in the face of laws that are not for the highest good of humanity, especially in the face of celebrations of genocide, especially in the face of no agreement, of death, of destruction, especially in the face of what appears to be against us. when we simply pause and recognize that there is a power at hand that is breathing me, and that I am one with this power and presence, my view begins to shift and change from a place of despair and depression and anxiety to a place of hope. Now, I want to tell you is we don't just want to stop at hope. That hope is indeed a higher vibration than fear and depression and anxiety and doubt and despair. That even though hope is a higher vibration than those things that I've named, it is not the place where we want to ultimately hang out at. That our vista, our summit, is somewhere even beyond. It gets to that place of hope, of believing, of knowing, of experiencing, and then that place of celebration. And I recognize that even now, that there are places in my own life that I can celebrate the triumphant journey, and some places where it's not about that celebration yet. And coming into this acceptance that they both exist simultaneously within me, that they both exist simultaneously within you, and that to celebrate one thing or to mourn another or to be in grief or despair or doubt does not automatically cancel out one and the other doesn't cancel out the other, but that they are coexisting in our human experience and expression. And yet the absolute of who we are is joy, is peace, is abundance. It is that celebration of life, right? And it first starts off with appreciation. So let's take a moment to begin to appreciate our journey as Downey Center for Spiritual Living and where we are and where we're headed and the vista that we are on. I mean, we started out this year by making some decisions early on in March that because we were not going to go back into our physical building, that it was in the best interest of the community in order to grow and to continue to unfold and to be able to still provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation, that we would sell our building and begin to actually look for a place that was a little more suitable for our hybrid community. What we knew was that at some point in time that life would be opening up again, right? And that we would be able to meet again physically in person, and that building would be best served by offering it up to someone who could use that space for the highest good of humanity. And so though the decision was difficult, the abundance is real, and we had multiple offers on the property. We continued to meet via Zoom and on Facebook and on YouTube, and we've continued to grow our community to such a degree that we still have Spanish Science of Mind classes happening behind the scenes. We have this abundance change for a change classes happening behind the scenes. We've had gatherings to see one another. And we continue now to grow and unfold. As a result of that sacred yes, and through the visioning of our community, we've now also been able to successfully sell the building. With that, home office has said, wait a minute, you are growing and expanding, and we have a new designation for you. The designation that you can take on is a teaching center. And so we have said yes to the teaching center, which grants us the opportunity to be hybrid, which is exactly what the community said they wanted. The community says, hey, we want to be able to be at home and feel safe and secure and get the vision, get the mission. We want to be able to get the message and see folks. And then we also want to be able to come in person when we can for events and classes and things of that nature. And so through the leadership, our spiritual leadership, our fiduciary leadership, we're applying for that particular status. And now that we're no longer part of the regional Downey community, we've now embraced our new designation and our working name of Vida Spiritual Learning Center, where the focus is on learning spiritual tools for our personal transformation. Like, this is celebrating the triumphant journey. We're celebrating that the abundance of our love, of our finances is so real that we're currently in the black, and that we're loving each other beautifully and magnificently and saying yes to continued growth and unfoldment. That the view from here, from this particular summit around our spiritual community, is vast. And we continue to vision and we continue to do the work within ourselves. What would feed me? What would assist me to grow? What would feed our community? What would attract more folks to this liberation philosophy? We are a liberation philosophy. And as a liberation philosophy, this philosophy and this way of living actually liberates us so that we are unencumbered by discord. That's exactly what Ernest Holmes said. And so how we continue to move forward together is so important. We continue to support our spiritual community through our classes. We continue to support our spiritual community with our finances. We continue to support our spiritual community with our prayers, and continuing to spread the news that we are here to transform lives, our own lives and the lives that our lives come in contact with. So there's 3 particular points in the celebration today as I begin to bring this to a close. And I started out with this because it is always, always at the top of my list, which is appreciate. So what we appreciate appreciates. And so in that appreciation, what are the things that we value? The relationships that we value. You know, if we value this particular community, how are we supporting our community? How are we prayerfully, on a regular basis, on a daily basis, praying for our community's growth, our unfoldment? You know, I'll take a moment to be very selfish in this moment. When was the last time you prayed for me as your spiritual director? How about our other ministers, and prayed for our leadership council that we continue to be led by Spirit to make decisions that are amazing and beautiful and in divine order for all of our health and wholeness? I invite you to do that on a daily basis, to include us in your daily prayers, our practitioners who are here to guide you and know the truth, to include your ecclesiastical leadership and your fiduciary leaders. We include you in our prayers on a regular basis and are constantly keeping our community members and our future members in our prayers, knowing your health and your wholeness and your abundance and your peace, knowing that right where you are, God is. So appreciating that, recognizing that that is a value, and supporting this spiritual community in those ways with our time, our talent, and our treasure are absolutely important as we continue now to see the view, but we also need to get to that next summit. That next summit where we have a location, that next summit where we are continuing to grow and unfold, where our online presence is amazing and powerful and reaching people that we've never reached before. That's the view from the summit that we're currently on. Now it is about the work that it takes to get to that next summit, and we all get to participate. So we appreciate, and then we celebrate. And so here we are, celebrating this plateau of our growth as a community. And we celebrate that by recognizing the joy, and that even though there might be a little bit of fear, that we celebrate where we've come from already in just 11 months of 2021. And that there's so much more to celebrate. There's so much more that we have here to celebrate. And lastly, that third component is to demonstrate your growth. And demonstrate your growth is pretty much like saying the proof is in the pudding. And so we have grown. We have grown. We've grown through this pandemic. We have grown in our spiritual practices. We have been deepened into our spiritual practices to such a degree that we continue to demonstrate and to show up. Don't stop now. Demonstrate your own individual growth, because our own individual growth is our collective growth as a community. As we begin to use the name Vida, Spiritual Learning Center, begin to demonstrate your growth in inclusion, in acceptance, in trusting the process. Begin to demonstrate the growth by continuing the prayer, by continuing to support this spiritual community in all the ways that you can, through your time, your talent, and your treasures. Because what we know is that growth happens. Growth happens. Shift happens. And we're growing and shifting together. And today it is indeed time for us to celebrate the triumphant journey. That we have reached this plateau, that we are here, and that we still have a ways to go together. So, because we are here, let us simply take this moment to know the truth of who we are, to celebrate the growth. And sometimes the growth is just that little shift, because it means that our perspective has changed. It means that we are indeed facing the direction of our dreams. So I'm inviting you to continue to keep the eye on the prize, to this new awareness of yourself. To remember that we are spiritual beings in this human experience, in this spiritual experience, and that together, by valuing and empowering all, we inspire a joyous and fulfilling life. And by appreciating in each and every moment the gifts that we have, and by demonstrating that, celebrating it, demonstrating it, sharing our gifts, that is indeed how we continue to grow individually and collectively. And so, beloveds, let us now celebrate and celebrate our triumphant journey. Until next week, know that you are loved. We're going to be hanging out after service. If there are those of you who would love prayer with a practitioner, I want to invite you to celebrate that way, to appreciate that way, to demonstrate in that way. And we are here for you. Wherever it is that you find yourself on your journey, know that Vida Spiritual Learning Center is here for you. Until the next time, let us just take in the breath and let us close out with our song, which is indeed a prayer. Know that you are loved.